Yo, it's RT, and welcome back to another VG Wars. If you guys don't know what the series is, then I have a whole playlist. Go to my playlist section and go watch the other ones so you can know what this series is all about, because by now I feel like you should know what the series is. So if you're new to the series, there is a whole playlist of a lot of episodes of this series so you can figure out what this series is all about. This episode is going to be on Sonic Colors versus Sonic Lost World. We have a special guest in this video. SuperNardful decided that he wanted to join me in this. He'll be in this video going over Sonic Lost World while I go over Sonic Colors. So remember to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and let's get straight into this. Starting with Sonic Colors story. So Sonic Colors was one of the first main games that went with a light-hearted story. No emeralds or anything, nothing too deep. A lot of the lines and writing were corny, and it's really childlike, and it doesn't really capture fully what Sonic is. I understand that this game went for a more light-hearted tone, but at the same time, this is a Sonic game, and having bad writing in Sonic games isn't the best. Like, I'm not saying this writing was terrible, but this writing could have been a lot better. Sonic could have got a lot better lines, and there could have been a lot more going on with the story, but they kept it simple. And you gotta kind of appreciate the simplicity in the story. You do gotta remember this game was on the Wii, so a lot of kids play the game with the Wii. You know, with Mario, a lot of people say that Sonic Colors is the Mario game of the franchise, and I can kind of see that. The story is also unique, introducing the Wisp, and of course, yeah, now the Wisp been overused, but at the time, you know, the Wisp were a new concept, and it was a really cool concept. So the story gets a 6. Now let's get into Sonic Colors gameplay. Sonic Colors gameplay is pretty decent. Sonic isn't limited to any moves that he has. He basically has all the traditional Sonic moves, and the introduction of the Wisp power-ups adds a lot more dynamic to the game. There's also a lot of Wisp in the game. This adds a lot of dynamic to the level design. That can add a lot to the level design. The level design isn't the best in the Sonic series. There is a lot of 2D sections, and the 3D sections do feel like they're just there to just get to the next 2D section, and the 2D section is where most of the work is done in the level design. But overall, the level design is pretty decent. It's not bad, so the gameplay gets an 8. Sonic Colors music is it's just amazing. It's Sonic Colors music. We have tracks like all the Planet Wisp tracks, all the Aquarium Park tracks. Just listen to the soundtrack. Listen to the soundtrack. The soundtrack is amazing. Listen to it. It's really good. It just, like, every stage has good music, and even if you don't like every stage's music, you have to agree that at least one of the stages' music is good. So the music in Sonic Colors gets a 10. Now getting into Sonic Colors content. Sonic Colors has good content. Just straight up good content. There is 8 areas in the game, and each area has 6 zones and also a boss fight. We also have Terminal Velocity. Terminal Velocity have 3 zones, and also the game land adds more levels too. So that technically counts for more levels too. And so this game has a lot of levels, a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of levels, a lot of missions. Like I said earlier, a lot of the level design is built around all these different Wisps, and since all these Wisps are different and do different things, there's a lot you can do with the level design. Sonic Colors content gets a 10. Into Sonic Colors controls, you can play with the controller by itself, you can play with the controller with the nunchuck, you can play with the classic controller, and you can play with the GameCube controller. So say if you don't like using the controller by itself, if you have a nunchuck, just hook your nunchuck up and you can play with your nunchuck. If you don't like that, you can use the classic controller. If you don't like that, you can use the GameCube controller. The game is also pretty responsive, so you don't have to really deal with input issues. Problem I could see with controls is if you don't have those other controllers and you don't like playing with the controller itself. Say you don't like playing with the Wii remote by itself, and you don't have a nunchuck or any of the other control schemes, then you're stuck with this, and then you have to pay more money. And say you can't afford another controller, then you're stuck with a control scheme that you don't like. So that's one thing, but other than that, the controls are pretty good. You can learn them easily. If you have those other controllers, definitely you can use those. If you don't like one control scheme, there's a lot of different choices. So the controls gets an 8.
It turns out Sonic Lost World has one of the weaker plots of the last decade. Ever since Sonic Colors, the approach has been a more light-hearted tone in the game's stories. While this was the case for Lost World, the result was pretty uninspiring compared to Colors' story. The main villains of the game, creatively named the Deadly Six, may just be the worst of the series. First off, while it's mentioned that they're what are called Zeti, none of their backstory is developed, including how Eggman quote-unquote conquered them like mentioned in one of the cutscenes. As for each of the villains themselves, they all just have one-dimensional character traits. I remember complaints about the Koopalings being added to Mario Kart 8 because they're all the same, but even they have far more personality than these guys. While I did mention that Lost World was on the more lighthearted side, there were parts that were definitely trying to be a bit more dark, and I don't know if they exactly fit the story. Zora's entire character was a bit uncomfortable for me, and there were also scenes in the story that felt a bit forced, such as Tails being offended by Sonic wanting Eggman to help them save the world. This was pretty uncharacteristic of Tails and made him quite unlikable during the story, especially considering he's been more than willing to work with Eggman in the past if it meant saving the world. Just think Adventure 2. I have to give the story for Lost World a 5. The parkour mechanic provided much opportunity for interesting level design. While this could have been taken a little bit further, or could perhaps be expanded on for a sequel if it were to happen, it made Sonic Lost World quite a fun game to play. For 3D levels, the parkour mechanic offered means of exploration in pretty wide open spaces. For the 2D levels, it offered platforming challenges that can test even experienced Sonic players. The challenges of the 2D levels honestly give me classic Sonic vibes. What may help with this is the fact that many of the Lost World enemies are from classic Sonic games, which is absolutely a nice touch, by the way. The one area where the gameplay is a bit weak is the boss battles. They are absolute pushovers until the last 2 worlds of the game. This is partly due to the triple homing attack doing 3 times the damage on enemies. Some bosses can even be taken out in 2 hits. With all this said, I give Sonic Lost World's gameplay a 9. As you can expect from a Sonic game, the music of Lost World is exceptional. While it doesn't pack multiple bangers like other games, each song fits its respective environment or level quite well. With this said, there are still a few bangers such as Honeycomb Highway, Sea Bottom Segway, and Dragon Dance. Sonic Lost World's music gets a 9. Sonic Lost World features 8 worlds including the bonus world, which you need to beat the story mode in order to unlock. While the bonus world's presentation was quite bland, the levels were still interesting. I especially appreciate the level where we could fly in Tails' tornado. Throughout the worlds, there are these mini-games that can be played to obtain flickies, which are required to proceed through the levels. While the mini-games aren't something you would go out of your way for, they can be just a little fun. You can also unlock Super Sonic, which is super fun to play as once you unlock him. You need to collect every red ring in the game, which presents quite the challenge that is so hard that I have a 30-minute rage compilation trying to do this on my channel.
No!
Shameless plug aside, finally collecting these red rings is extremely satisfying, and it was great to have a more challenging experience in a Sonic game, something that isn't often seen in the 3D Sonic games today. There's also a multiplayer mode in Lost World in which you can race the other player, which is quite fun to play as well. The content for Sonic Lost World gets a 10. Sonic Lost World moved away from the boost gameplay that was being used in other Sonic games during the time. While it's widely believed that having 3 different run modes for Sonic goes against how Sonic should control, like a more momentum-based movement, what was implemented in Lost World works quite well for the level design. For example, the 2D levels do require a slower pace for Sonic overall, and walking is quite perfect for that. The one thing I do wish was different was the fact that the run button is the same button as the one used for the parkour mechanic. This made it quite easy to unintentionally start scaling a wall if you happen to be running by it. The controls for Sonic Lost World gets an 8.
Alright, so let's get to the final results. So Sonic Colors got a 42 and Sonic Lost World got a 41. So Sonic Colors did take the crown in this video. It was really close, but Sonic Colors definitely overall is the better game here. Sonic Colors has a more superior story. The lighthearted story works better in Sonic Colors. Sonic Lost World's writing is just all over the place. It's not the best writing. So is Sonic Colors writing, but Sonic Colors writing definitely is superior to Sonic Lost World, and that is really what killed Lost World. Story got a 5 in Lost World. So yeah, the story is just, I feel like the gameplay is solid in Lost World. I'd like to thank Nard for joining me in this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all in the next one.